Hey friends, Mikester here, and thank you for joining us for Pause for the Cause. And here today, I want to introduce to you Dan Sigale. Dan is the director of the Spectrum Chamber Music Society, and Dan, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Well, right away, tell us about Spectrum and how it all began.
So the Spectrum Chamber Music Society is the longest continuously running chamber music series in Fort Worth.
Really?
We started back in 1986. It was 6 musicians from what was then the Fort Worth Chamber Orchestra, became the Fort Worth Symphony. They were asked to play a program at First Jefferson Unitarian Church. For an anniversary present. And they enjoyed playing together so much that they decided to, with the help of the church, they decided to make a series out of it.
Nice.
And then around about 1997, we were invited to come here to First United Methodist. And so we've been here over 20 years. I think this is our 21st season.
That is so great.
So we do 3 concerts a year, and we're part of the Gift of Music series that the church puts on.
Yes.
And we feature musicians from the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra, mostly, but we occasionally invite other people, faculty members from UNT, TCU, UTA, the Dallas Symphony. We've had some players come over. And so we end up with a pretty big bench of
Boy,
players.
I'll say, what a great bench.
Sure.
A strong bench,
Absolutely.
it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Now, you've been talking about you've had all these good experiences in Fort Worth. Fort Worth is not your home, is it?
Yeah, you can tell from my accent.
You have this wonderful accent, and it comes from?
From the Midwest.
Yeah, and you're home.
I am from just outside Chicago. And Skokie, Illinois, the North Shore suburbs.
You bet.
And I grew up going to hear the Chicago Symphony Orchestra.
Oh, gosh.
And I was, obviously I loved going to those concerts, but they also had a chamber music series that was sponsored by the orchestra. It was run by the orchestra. And so there'd be concerts. And when I decided I wanted to go into music, my goal was to find that combination, to find an orchestra that also had chamber music so that I would be able to do both. Orchestra is where I'm going to make my living, and then chamber music as well. And that ended up happening here in Fort Worth. Even though Spectrum is not officially with the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra, it's somewhat an extension of it.
There's a real solid relationship.
Right. So that's absolutely a perfect situation for me.
Oh, that's so neat.
Yeah, I'm very happy about it.
And when you were young, were you drawn to a particular instrument at first, or did you enjoy kind of dabbling all over the place?
I'm a string player through and through. My brother, my older brother, a couple years older than me, was playing, he played the cello and the piano, and I really wanted to play a string instrument too, so I started on the violin and switched in high school to the viola, which is a lesser known the brother of the violin.
Hidden gem.
So the way I like to describe it when people ask me is, this is violin and this is viola.
Okay.
So it's a very subtle difference. You're still bowing the same way. It's a little bit of a deeper sound. And when a lot of violists will say that they didn't choose the viola chose them. And I am one of those persons.
Very Harry Potter-like.
Right. Yes, before Harry Potter ever came along.
That's right, yeah.
We had, it was sort of a sorting hat kind of thing.
Oh, that's
but
so great.
so when I started on the viola, I would never have a career if I had continued on violin. But when I switched to viola, it motivated me, and it opened up a whole bunch of doors. And then I ultimately decided it's what I wanted to do for my career.
Gosh, and I bet you've enjoyed it as a career.
I absolutely have enjoyed it. I've been in the Fort Worth Symphony now for, last year was my 20th anniversary in the Fort Worth Symphony. And I started when I was 7. And
You're a young man who's
right.
played for a long
Sure,
time.
exactly.
So did you specifically come to Fort Worth for the Fort Worth Symphony opportunity?
Yes, that's sort of the deal. If you want to be an orchestral musician, you audition where there are openings.
Yeah.
There's actually a sort of a trade paper through the Musicians Union that in the back it's help wanted ads.
Yeah.
Only they're orchestras saying we're auditioning the following instruments. And so, you look through every month, you go straight to the back page,
Right.
and you look at the help wanted, and then you decide where you're going to want to go to audition.
Sure.
So I played in the Phoenix Symphony for a couple of seasons.
I bet that was fun.
It was. I feel like Fort Worth is a better fit for me. I enjoy it very much. I enjoy being a part of the community
Good.
in Fort Worth.
This is a good place to live, isn't it?
It is. It's a very good place to live.
Well, you mentioned earlier that there's a series every year, and typically there's a handful of concerts in the
Right,
series.
right.
How do you, for any specific concert, how do you decide what the theme or the specific pieces are going to be?
So the theme for all Spectrum concerts is basically we have no theme. So basically,
Is this Seinfeld? Is this
yeah,
like
kind of. Yeah, it's a
show
concert about nothing.
Yes!
It's a concert about nothing. But yet it's about a lot of things, like Seinfeld. But with most chamber music series, they decide before the season begins, we want to do a program of French music. We want to have just string quartet music on this concert. And they pick the program, and then they bring in the musicians. They hire them to play. We do things differently in Spectrum. We crowdsource. So what I do is I go to the musicians of the Fort Worth Symphony and I say, what would you like to play? What's a piece that you've been dying to play?
That's a fun way to do it.
It's kind of, we're like a bucket list
Sure.
kind of ensemble and series. And so, what I say to them is, if you have a piece you want to play, get your group together, let me know when you can perform, and we'll try and get you on the program. So the result is that we have such an eclectic program each time. You might get a string quartet, and then you might get 2 basses, and then a trumpet ensemble we've had here. And so it's almost like you don't know what you're going to get. And we don't know what we're going to get. So it makes it exciting.
Yeah, that must be so interesting to approach it that way.
It's interesting. It's a little stressful, if I'm going to be honest, because sometimes you're struggling to, maybe it's just not a good date for a lot of people. And, so that's usually when we start to bring in people from outside the orchestra. We love having them come, but also that gives us more possibilities for performers.
You bet.
So that's the way that we run things here at Spectrum. And so the audience, you'll find out a couple of weeks before if you choose to look.
Yeah.
Or you can just show up and look in the program and go, wow, this is an interesting combination. So that's how it goes with Spectrum.
I think that's so neat. And I also think that it's really neat that there's been this long relationship with Spectrum and First United Methodist Church. As you said, over 20 years.
Over 20 years. We so value our relationship with the church here. You guys have been great. You've been very welcoming to us, very accommodating. And so it's been a really great collaboration.
Good.
We've appreciated it.
I'm glad that that's been your experience. So Dan, here's my final question for you, and this is in the very practical category of life. I'm going to come to the next Spectrum concert, and how much money do I need to budget for tickets?
So one thing that I really like about Spectrum is we're very accessible. Our concerts are free, thanks to the church.
Did you say free?
I did.
Free?
I said free.
Free?
Thanks to the church underwriting the concerts, the Spectrum concerts, the 3 concerts that we have, fall, winter, and spring, all fall within the larger series called The Gift of Music that I'm sure everyone's familiar with.
Right.
And that means that our concerts are free and general admission open to the public.
Wow. And I hadn't thought of the fact that that word gift really means this is a gift to all of us.
Right.
Oh, thank you for that information.
Sure.
Well, Dan, this has been so much fun to learn about Spectrum. And I understand that the next concert is going to be on February 11th?
Right. Spectrum concerts are always on Mondays.
Okay.
So one in the fall, one in the winter, one in the spring.
Okay.
So this February 11th at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
In Leonard Memorial Chapel. Very intimate setting, great acoustics. Again, it's a free concert. On the program is I've mentioned before that Spectrum is eclectic.
Yes.
So we have music for clarinet and viola and piano.
Yes.
And we have a piece for 2 tubas and narrator where the text
Are those 2 by?
tuba. I don't know. I'll ask my tuba friends. Two tubas and narrator, and the text is poems from Alice in Wonderland from Lewis Carroll. It's called the Wonderland Duets.
Nice.
So it's going to be a very interesting concert and a lot of fun.
Wow. Dan, thank you so much. And friends, I hope that you'll be at that concert on February 11th. And thank you for joining us for Pause for the Cause.